Warm greetings, everyone. On behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank built as Citizens Collective, we welcome you to another session of Wednesdays for Water. The conversation today is on river rights and responsibilities. The objective of Wednesdays for Water is to engage in conversation with water experts, grassroots practitioners, policymakers, and youth to explore the complex intertwined issues associated with water and the possible solutions the people are making towards solving them. It also has expanded since then to have more activities like the Friday Waters and Monday Munching with Women for Water, besides organizing on-site water workshops, water talks and walks, seminars, special courses, and conference panels to continue the water conversation in various possible ways. At W4W, we strongly believe that water conversation is the only way to move towards water conservation. Do visit our website www.w4w.in for more details. My name is Mansee Bal Bhargava, and I am the moderator and host for today from W4W. And as we discuss the river rights and responsibilities, there are many speculations, many aspirations, and personally, I feel river is a being. In fact, a more stronger being than a human being is, because they have been living here for ages. But I am not the one who is going to discuss them in detail. In today's session on river rights and responsibilities, we have Professor Venkatesh Dutta, Dr. Avdhesh Pratap, and Namrata Kabra. And before I invite them, first of all, many thanks to all three of you to join today for this conversation. And before I give you the floor, may I just have a few more minutes to introduce each of you briefly, and I will put the detailed bio in the chat box. Professor Venkatesh Datta is an environmental scientist whose work focuses on rivers, wetlands, and floodplains. He has been a Fulbright Fellow and a British Chevening Fellow. Currently, he is also a professor in Uttar Pradesh, I must say, in Lucknow. But at the same time, he's teaching at many places across the country about his passionate subject, river and water. And he's a full professor at the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences at BBAU, which is a Central University of Lucknow. And I'm keeping it short here because we really want to hear from them. But important to talk about Venkatesh is he's also a good friend. But apart from that, he has been part of many, many policy discussions which has happened at the state as well as at the country level. And moving on to our next speaker, Dr. Avdhesh Pratap, who is a senior lawyer at the Supreme Court, and he has also done his PhD in water laws and policies, and also an ardent advocate of the river rights and responsibilities and what are the legal ways people can look at it. And he has been also lecturing and talking about these things at various universities and public platforms, and of course policy and governmental platforms as well. Again, keeping it short. And now we have our discussant today, Ms. Namrata Kabra, who is a legal researcher with an expertise in environmental and climate change policies, with focusing on India and South Asia. She is a program associate for water and climate security at Kabra Initiative. I hope I have pronounced the word correctly. And she leads the South Asian Bioregionalism Working Group. Her research areas spans interdisciplinary domains, integrating legal, environmental, and socioeconomic factors, which includes climate risk, transboundary, urban water, climate cooperation, and many other things. And I see gender also as one of our interests, and importantly, what we are talking today, which is the rights of nature. So welcome once again, all three of you, and warm welcome to especially Venkatesh and Avdesh sir, because it is their return to the platform again to speak with us, because they have been our previous speakers as well. So they know the format, they know the rules of the game here. And we have our discussant today. So we are going to really start from the discussant today, where Namrata is going to take it over from me from here on. Over to you, Namrata. And thank you so much, Venkatesh and Avdesh sir, to come back again on our platform. And this session was, by the way, initiated by them that we should have this session. So thanks again for the idea as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mansee. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here with two very eminent speakers today, and I think it's going to be an extremely interesting discourse and discussion today on rights of rivers from two different perspectives, which rightfully need to be brought in together. One is going to be the ecological perspective, which Dr. Venkatesh is going to highlight, and Avdhesh is going to be talking about the legal side of things and legal perspective. So we need to. It's going to be very interesting for all the listeners today to correlate both the perspectives and see how we can protect rights and rights of nature and rights of river. What I'll do is maybe I'll invite first Dr. Venkatesh Dutta to kind of kindly start or begin with what is a river, what are the river's rights, what should be rivers' rights from an ecological sense and perspective. Uh, Over to you.
Thank you so much for this nice and generous introduction, both Mansi and Namrata. Uh, the topic is very important. Like we are today talking about the rights of the river, and it is not just the river rights, but also the entire global movement that recognizes rivers as legal entities. So, granting them certain rights to exist, rights to thrive, and also rights to regenerate. So, the entire approach is rooted in the overall understanding that rivers are not just a water channel, it is not just a mere man made artifact for human exploitation, but they are living ecosystems, and so, by granting legal personhood to rivers, their rights are upheld. So, I have got a very small presentation to set the tone. So, can you just start? Yeah, this is already on the screen. So, I was just talking about if you want to understand a river from an ecological perspective, like a living ecosystem. So, how do you approach when you go to see a river? The engineering approach would be to just see as an human artifact, man-made channel or canal or channel of flowing water. Sometimes we even do not recognize that they have taken millions of years to come to this form. It is not just few years or not even thousands of years, millions of years, I say. And they are not just the channel of flowing water. They are the critical ecosystem. They are ecosystem in motion. So I think when we set in 2018, when we had this a meeting in Delhi, and I was sitting with many stalwarts of river science, hydrology, and also the other aspects. So we decided to define the river, and I came across many building blocks. So if you move to the next slide, I'll tell you how do you define a river. Okay. So I say that uh, you have to understand river as a first, it is unordered, something which is not ordered properly. You have to respect the wilderness. You have to respect that it likes to be heterogeneous. You have to respect that it is not to be tamed, to be diverted, to be cut into pieces, to be fragmented. It is an unordered wilderness that we have to respect. And second, it is an ecosystem in motion. It is not static like we have the latic ecosystem and the lentic ecosystem, lotic and lentic. So it is a lotic ecosystem. It is an ecosystem in motion, constantly changing. We say that we cannot hold the water again and again, it must move on. So there is a flow. So to define a river, you need three F's and three B's. And those three F's are free flow, free floods, and fluvial terrace. These three F's must remain to define the functional integrity of a fluvial ecosystem. That is, a river has a right to flow freely, a river has a right to flood, and a river has a right to maintain its fluvial terrace, that is, banks on both sides. Fluvial terrace also means the upland and also the floodplain. Coming back to the three B's, the three B's are natural banks on both sides, and on the bank you have the bank vegetation, And the third B is the base flows, the water that comes from the aquifer to the main channel or through tributaries. They are collecting also the spring water and the groundwater, and it is the base flow that sustains the river in lean season. So these 6 elements should be there, like we should not compromise with all these 6 elements, right? Next. So based upon these 6 elements, I have tried to define the right of the rivers. I have given 8 pointers to ponder on. So today's discussion should, like especially on the ecological aspect and also on the functional aspect, what are the rights? And these rights are not something that I am bringing out of the box. They are there and they have been thread previously through many landmark judgments. They are isolated. You have to bring them under one umbrella. So I've tried to look into various cases through several years and tried to, develop this building blocks. The first is the right of the rivers on the land of the rivers. Nadi ki jameen, nadi ki ho. The rights of the rivers on the lands of the rivers. And how do you define the lands of the rivers? The riparian lands, the flood plains, and the vegetation buffer zone that you find on the both sides. Second is the right of the rivers to flow naturally. When I say naturally, we mean the entire mosaic of flows, the diversity of flows, including the ecological flows. Ecological flow is overall holistic term, but it also includes a variety of flow regimes. So a river has a right to flow naturally. Third is a river has a right to flow without any human generated waste. Okay, that means the quality and the wholesomeness, that is very important. जब हम गंगा की बात करते हैं तो गंगा का गंगत्व भी होता है, the wholesomeness. It is not just the clean glass. When you hold the water in glass, you can define cleanliness on several parameters, quality indicators, but the wholesomeness is very important. The right of the river to flow without any human generated waste. And the fourth is right of the rivers to maintain their ecosystems, that is the ecological integrity, all the connected ecosystems. So I define it by river continuum. A river is connected with variety of habitats and wetlands and ditches and connected pools and so many things. Next. So these are the 4 rights, and next I'll move to next 4 set of rights. The right of the rivers to remain connected with their smaller tributaries, that is called the stream connectivity. If I just cut off one channel or one tributary, then again the right is jeopardized. Okay, so right is threatened. So you have to maintain that connectivity with all the tributaries with the main channel. 6 is the right of the rivers to maintain water bodies. A river has a right to maintain its own water bodies like lakes, ponds, and natural water sources in their catchment. So it is again the river continuum concept, the connectivity with the water bodies. And the 7th right is the right of the rivers to have sufficient groundwater as base flows. Now we have included it because many of the rivers are drying up because of the lack of base flows, because of the disconnected floodplain aquifers. You exploit groundwater so much that there's nothing in the lean season except you have the rainwater. Then 8th is very important, just like family, like we if you consider river as a functional unit, as a living entity, then a river has a right over all the streams, over all water sources, and all the underground water to be considered as an integral part of the family of the river basin. And I call it basin integrity. So these all 8 sets of rights define the wholesomeness of the river, right from equality to flow to, free flow and free floods. So I'll stop here, and because I wanted to have more of discussion, especially on the legal and the fluvial functions and the ecosystem services. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Venkatesh. It was very beautifully began. I think all of us would agree that it's the unorderedness of rivers is what makes it so beautiful, especially in South Asia, where rivers are it would start flowing from a very high range and then kind of nourishing our entire floodplains and through which we are all surviving today. I'd now like to bring Advocate Avdhesh to the conversation to bring, like when we are saying that these rights need to be, these rights exist actually. We don't need to know, it is already doing its work. These rights already exist, but in an ecosystem of a society and a civilization, what we need to do is, as humans whose impacts is continuously harming or changing or altering these ecosystems, we need to recognize these rights which already exist. But how do we recognize this in different kind of political systems that we are in? I'd like to bring Avdhesh to share some insights on the trajectory of rights of nature or rights of rivers in Indian context, be it legal, policy, and judicial frameworks, to highlight what the story has been or the narrative has been. Yeah, over to you. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Good evening, Namrata. And apart from this conversation, I would like to join you in my team because I would like to introduce you with the government of India and some state governments for policy making. I am working since 12 to for policy making and lawmaking, and we have drafted so many bill. I will discuss with you with which regard to river. Basically, when we are talking about river right, I will start from Manusmriti. Manusmriti define river rights as natural right, which include intact floodplain and floodplain floodplain zone, which is which is which is covered with dense forestation and protected wildlife habitat. But floodplain is a space which is very grossly and very badly encroached, not only in India, in China, and first time in Europe in Thames. Then they clear, and the most example to study as a case study is Murray-Darling River Basin in Australia, which floodplain of the river was badly encroached, and river was very close to die. But they naturally uh, restore and maintain all the natural system there, and now Murray-Darling is a very good river in Australia. And after that, Manusmriti, in Vedas, the natural right is maintained from Manusmriti, and Kautilya's Arthashastra is very much clearly define the natural rights of river. And punishment was there if anybody encroach in the natural rights of the river. And in British period in 1884, the Tamil Nadu Rivers Conservancy Act also very strict to protect the natural rights of river. And there is a provision of rupees 500 fine if anybody encroach the floodplain and riverbed of any river. And 500 rupees was the enormous amount at in 1884, because silver coin was 1 rupee. Today it cost around 1500 rupees. 500 is the enormous amount for fine to encroach in natural rights of river. And when there is a case in British era decided by Privy Council, Sandhi Raju versus Union of India, That time it was not Union of India, but Privy Council decided the matter, and it was the first case decided by Privy Council to protect the natural rights. It was decided in 1932, and there are number of cases over Ganga and other rivers to protect, and the Supreme High Court Allahabad marginally fix a space of from middle of the river to the side to protect the floodplains. But in our country, Supreme Court orders are not very exactly implemented because of poor governance. And water is not a vote casting issue till date, then government is not very serious regarding, now it is serious, but not very serious regarding protection of river rights and protection of our rivers and water resources. We have drafted many laws at national level, but they are in bill stage, not turned to uh, act because of this vote politics, that it is not an issue of vote casting, and people are crying and dying because of waterborne diseases and lack of scarcity, lack of water, scarcity of water, and contamination of water. But neither state government nor union government is very serious about water rights and river rights. And most of the rivers are encroached badly, whether these are tributaries or there are main rivers. And one thing more, in Manusmriti, river is compared with human body, and human heart. That river is main artery, and other nerves are, the tributaries are other nerves like our main, other than main arteries. The river is, main river is artery, main artery of heart, and other net of nerves are the system to cover the river right. So now there is a very good bill, River Basin Management Bill 2021. But till date, it is the Doavia committee was working since 2012 to repeal River Board Act and to draft River Basin Management Bill. They drafted, but then again it was redrafted by Sahu committee, and now it is under the table of Parliament to be an act. But till date, it is not an act. And we have drafted National Water Law Framework Bill in 2013, revised, redrafted by next government in 2014, and released in 2016 as National Water Law Framework Bill. In that particular bill, river rights are very clearly defined. I was also the member of the group who drafted this bill in both time in Manmohan Singh government and at the time of redrafting in Modi government. But it is still a bill because of the governance problem, and there is no strong political will to conserve our rivers. When we are talking about judiciary, after Sandhi Raju case in 1932, there are so many cases, and the most important case is decided by Justice Rajiv Sharma's bench in by in Uttarakhand High Court, which clearly define the river rights similar to Manusmriti. And the main part of effective part is river Yamuna, Ganga, and the tributaries are legal entity. Ganga, Yamuna, their tributaries, and small channels also, which join to tributary of Yamuna and Ganga. It is very clearly written by Justice Rajiv Sharma, are legal entity, and it has right to sue under article to protect article 21, under article 32 or 226. But it is sub judice in Supreme Court till date. It is not defined, it is not finally decided by Supreme Court. It is a very important case which protect river rights, very close and similar to Manusmriti, that river is a legal entity and have natural rights like a human body, because the river is similar to human body, like which statement is given in Manusmriti.
Great.
So these are the, and now I think according to the structure of this particular session, we would move to question answer session, and the question which is set for me, I am ready to answer each and every question.
Thank you both the speakers for very briefly but succinctly taking us through the legal as well as ecological perspective. And what we are listening is that a lot of times the legal perspective has taken into account the ecological perspective, but today we are at a stage where the implementation remains a key challenge, which is not yet implemented in true spirit. But I would also like to know, because the session is called River Rights and Responsibilities. So we have spoken extensively right now on the rights. Moving towards responsibility. So when we say responsibilities, I would like to ask both of you, like, whose responsibilities are we talking about? Is it the river's responsibility or our responsibility? Is it institutional or community? What is your perspective on the responsibility aspect? And also, when we say that rivers have a right to sue, for our other for all the listeners, they would like to know, I feel, that when they say river has a right to sue, who on behalf of rivers actually going to come and sue, if at all? So there is a principle called the parents patre, that somebody has to be a parent of the river or a guardian of the river to be standing in favor of the river and bringing the matters to the court. But who also, according to both of you, should actually be the parent of the river? Whom can we entrust this responsibility upon? Either of you can go first.
Basically, God is the parent of river. No one living, no human being can be able to guardian of the river. And constitution can be the parent of river, because river has constitutional rights now. And in Manusmriti, the rights defined in Manusmriti was also the natural right, which is mentioned as constitutional right after the commencement of constitution, after Republic of Constitution. And now, under Rajiv Sharma judgment, river can sue any person, but the one different is there, human being be sued also. But Ganga is not, Ganga or any river cannot sued by anyone. But Ganga, Yamuna, or any river, when Supreme Court is finalized the verdict, is the river who can sue, who encroach the rights. And it is very simple, like first case of public interest litigation in the form of standing in US, DDT case, a person came before the honorable court to protect the right to life of a specific specific word. I think Namrata, you are postgraduate in environment science. You are well aware about DDT case, and the name is different, but it is popularly known as DDT case. One person came before the court to protect the right to life of a specific world who were dying after eating the insect which were affected by DDT. And DDT was banned all around the world after the decision of that particular case. Then one person, any person, like a person, I forget the name, who is a Muslim person, came for river Yamuna and Ganga before High Court Nainital, High Court Uttarakhand, and Justice Rajiv Sharma decided the matter. So you cannot sue the river, but river can sue according to the judgment of Rajiv Sharma. And when we are talking about responsibility, the river is always came forward or come forward for responsibility. River Ganga is feeding 40% population of the country. Means 40% means 60 crore people is by means of any purpose, agriculture, drinking, irrigation, 40% of the total population of India. So then river is always present for human being, and it completes all responsibilities, and the responsibilities are natural. It is natural bounty for human being, any river, because river not only flow like water, it feed the basin completely for drinking, for cook, for drinking, agriculture, and energy consumption, energy, power. All the factors are well settled by any river to its basin people. Then we are not able, human beings are not able to discuss the responsibility of any river, because river is always responsible. In worst condition, river is feeding to its basin people, not only people, animal, plants, every total ecology, to maintain ecology and the wildlife and all the lives related to the basin. Then we cannot elaborate responsibility of a river. In worst condition, river is flowing to to fulfill the responsibilities. Now over to Venkatesh.
I think, like you have raised a very important question, who should be the guardian? There is this concept of what you call the loco parentis, that is for rivers, and it has been tried in other countries like New Zealand and Australia. They had very well defined, they have defined in their constitution a very well structured and inclusive framework to protect the river rights. And they call it the guardianship model. The guardianship model should reflect the ecological, the social, the cultural, and all other even economic significance of rivers. And how do you combine the legal authority with the local and expert knowledge? There are different models, like who should be the guardian of the river. This question came up in the classical Uttarakhand case when the court said that the river passes through many states, so there cannot be more than one guardian, and there has to be one guardian of the river. So there are community based guardianship where the local communities or the indigenous groups, they have a very deep cultural and spiritual connect with the rivers. They are the first to feel the impacts of the river degradation. They have that traditional knowledge base to protect, but how do you empower that community to be the guardian? There are river councils. There are river councils, for example, in New Zealand, the tribal groups, they are the co-guardians with the government. So there are councils, and they act like a guardians, and there are government agencies. Uh, for example, the river councils, where uh, the council can enforce laws, and they can even allocate budgets for river protection and restoration. This is happening in several countries. So so in some other places, we have seen that there are some independent legal trustees. For example, it could be like a third party NGO, could be a trust, or could be a legal expert which could advocate to protect the rivers. And there are many quasi government models where no single entity is there, but there are multiple agencies, multiple stakeholders, including NGOs. For example, if you see the example of classical Murray-Darling Basin in Australia, there are collaborative governance models. But right now in our country, it is the judicial oversight that takes the prominent seat. It is more like a reactive approach, where courts are playing a critical role in upholding river rights when there is a dispute. But can you appoint court mandated guardians to act on behalf of rivers in legal matters which are quite complex, which are quite heterogeneous, which are quite diverse, like a country like India, there are so many river basins, and when we do not have well structured and inclusive governance framework. So we have, like, if you see the classical case of New Zealand, they gave a legal personhood to their rivers. Legal person, just like a person which can sue and which can be sued both ways. So there are complexities, but in India, legal framework are not able to ensure that rivers have guardians. Number one, who act on their behalfs, and number two, who could advocate for their protection and restoration in courts and policy making. It's only the judicial oversights, or sometimes any NGO or the trust would come forward and could fight the case. But if you see the architecture, the guardianship model, when you have to appoint guardians, or um, for example, a government body who could advocate for river rights in courts. So you have to first ensure that these rights are first enshrined, like in our constitution. Now, what is happening? You have the Article 21, right? But there is an absence of a very unified legal framework. Article 21 says that we have right to life, but this has not been explicitly extended to rivers. Although we assume that the right to life is contingent upon right to healthy environment, right to healthy river, but there is no, I mean, there is an indirect connection, but it is just not a very unified legal framework. There are laws like Water Act 1974, then there are this Environmental Protection Act, Forest Conservation Act. They also talk about on pollution control and resource management, but they are not giving any intrinsic rights to rivers. All of these legal landscape, if you see, the focus is still on pollution control. Focus is still on ad hoc approaches, like Kumbh is coming, then we would talk about closing of the tanneries. Then we would talk about the sewage treatment plant. So the focus is still on pollution control through ad hoc approaches, and a holistic framework to protect the sanctity of rivers is missing. And river conservation is not pollution control. River rejuvenation is not pollution control, right? So, I mean, the issues are quite complex, and of course, there is a need of legal guardian. So I would stop here.
Yeah. Thank you, both of you. And I see there has been a
May I
change.
just a second, Namrata, just interjecting for some digital issue.
Yeah, please.
I see someone has entered without any name, your name, otherwise I will be really forced to remove you from the meeting. Sorry, Namrata, but I have to take this
Okay.
call. Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Someone has entered without any name. I am removing you. Please enter with your name. And I
Yeah, yeah,
think
definitely.
it's sometimes there is bot. Huh? So over to you,
Mhm.
Right.
Namrata. Please take
Oh,
on.
that, no problem. So I was just noticing there has been a change of hat where, Professor Venkatesh was talking more about the legal side, and Avdhesh was talking about the ecological side, which is like, rivers are already doing their responsibilities themselves by, nurturing us, feeding us, and,
Namrata,
uh,
again, there
yeah,
is
yeah.
someone entering. I see
No,
last time I think you
no,
don't
I'm
allow.
not
Yeah, so just
admitting.
don't allow. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not
Okay,
admitting.
thank you.
I've
We
submitted
will
a
edit it, this part.
Yeah, yeah. No problem. So what we can do, like, as you very rightly mentioned, that, there are so many laws that already exist to protect rivers and water bodies, but they're all very fragmented. Either it's a very pollution control kind of a perspective, or it is banning certain activities, but it's not looking holistically. And even with the Uttarakhand High Court judgment, which said that, Yamuna and Ganga have the rights as legal persons, but the issue has been lying at Supreme Court, because the challenge really is that Ganga and Yamuna go beyond the boundaries of Uttarakhand.
Correct.
It
Right.
is, it's a very big basin which will include so many other states, and all of them have to come into, action mode, because only one part of Ganga and Yamuna cannot be given rights. So there are so many of these challenges, but a lot of the countries, as you very rightly mentioned, have been practicing, and there is so much that we could learn from them, especially from on the ground. If we have more and more voices talking about these issues, that would be really interesting. But there is one particular law which I would like to bring, not exactly a law, policy provision which kind of looks at ecological flow of river, which has now been mandated in India. That, in even in the lean season, all the states have to maintain in all the rivers at least 15 to 20% of the average lean season flow. So this, I think, in some essence, also is taking us back to what we're talking about, rights of rivers. The first essential right would be to allow the river to flow, so across all the seasons. So what is your perspective on this, that, the number is 15 to 20%? You think the 15 to 20% is a decent number? And how do you place this 15 to 20% within the aspect of, rivers are not themselves like just water. There are like a lot of aquatic
Right.
life dependent within them, and so
Exactly.
many activities continuously continue to happen, which is sand mining, or some kind of
Hmm.
other construction, bridges or flyovers, or riverfront development, which is increasingly happening everywhere in the country, or at
Yeah.
times the river interlinking projects where the channel is completely moved from one place to another. So, how do
Hmm.
you look at this particular law or the provision, which has been also recognized by the judiciary, that this needs to
Hmm.
be maintained? How do you place
Hmm.
this? Avdesh, sorry, Venkateshji, we could hear from you
Actually,
first.
yeah, the rights of the river, when I talked about the entire framework also includes the right to maintain the natural flow regimes. So this is a foundation element. We call it the flow is the master variable that would define river. So it is the flow and the diversity of flow. Sometimes rivers become channels of stagnant water or just intermittent streams. You have seen in Gomti River Basin and even Ganga River Basin, many of the perennial rivers are becoming seasonal. So they cannot thrive ecologically. The aquatic and riparian species, they lose habitats. The ecological functions are impaired. So how do you define? So starting from early, like start of this century, so much uh, uh, debate over e-flows, and sometimes we call it environmental flow, then ecological flow, then environmental water release, then minimum environmental flows. So ultimately you have to understand the logic behind the whole rationale of e-flow, why we want to maintain the ecological. I personally call it ecological flow because that is more holistic, and it refers to not just the quantity of flow or the quality of flow or the timing of the flow, but also the entire wholesomeness of flow events, the mosaic of flows, the entire what you call the flow regimes, because all the riparian diversity that you see in the river, it is due to flow variability. Flow variability would include the natural flow regimes, such as you have, like in the beginning I say the river has right to flood. So right to flood, even flood is part of the ecological flow. We include in the e-flow that for at least 15 days the uh, river must maintain a high flushing flow. We call it flushing flow. Flushing flow to, to carry the sediment, to transport the sediment, to maintain the floodplain, to maintain the channel morphology, and also to connect all the connected riparian wetlands. It is in the high flow events. So if you say that only this much minimum flow is required, that is also not correct. The flow variability and the ecological balance must include the seasonal high flows, that is floods. That's why I say that river has right to flood its own floodplain, because it is only in the floods that you see such habitat creation, nutrient recycling, sediment transport, and all the life cycle of aquatic organisms that are happening. Then there are certain species specific needs. For example, I was talking about few days back about Hilsa. We have created a Farakka barrage, and now the Hilsa fish, which is moving upward just like Atlantic salmon fish, the Hilsa cannot migrate upwards because of many barriers. You have the Farakka barrage, then you have Kanpur barrage, then you have Narora barrage, then you have Bhimgora barrage in the Ganga river. Earlier, before these barrages, the Hilsa fish or the Ilish mach, we call it in Kolkata, it was found all through the Ganga, right up to Haridwar, Allahabad, Banaras. But now there is a continuous decline of Hilsa fish. So there are many such iconic aquatic species which have evolved to depend upon the specific flow patterns, including the uh, the the flow connectivity. The what I call the longitudinal connectivity of the river for migration, for spawning, for feeding. Even like now dolphins, dolphins are restricted in these few pockets. They cannot go. Like there is this Farakka barrage, and some dolphins are caught between these Narora barrage and Kanpur barrage, then between Kanpur barrage and the Farakka barrage. So their habitats got fragmented. So by e-flows, we also mean that we would have certain provisions for such iconic species like, or we sometimes we also called the keystone species like fish and dolphins and turtles and all other invertebrates. So these flow events are the part of riparian cycles, the mosaic of flows, not just the floods but also the droughts, the low flow events. In the lean season, the biodiversity would be maintained. All the seeds are transported from the upper catchment to the lower basins due to high flow events. And when the water recedes, these seeds would be converted into plants and other, macrophytes and other species. So it is the flowing event that would determine the kind of riparian diversity you have on across both zones or riparian zones. And they would also define the functional floodplains, the estuaries, even the delta. The entire Sundarban delta was made by the work of rivers like Meghna river, Brahmaputra river, Ganga river, and all these connected river systems in the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna basins. So right now, for the sake of simplicity, we are just saying we just 10% of high flow events, or the mean annual runoff just take 40%, 30%. So these things are not correct. Actually, you have to have a flow regime which is mimicking the natural flow regime of the river. But for the sake of simplicity, we say that at least 50% of the long term flow regime should be maintained in the river. This is my rule. I call it the minimum environmental flows which should be maintained throughout the season. So when we draw the flow duration curve, like we take the discharge data, we plot it, and we say that at 50th percentile what is the discharge? Okay, that is the 50th% of time river is able to maintain that much of water. And we do it, we take it long-term data, at least for 25 years data, and we say that at least 50% of the water should remain in the channel. But again, this is also not a good approach. It is highly site specific. Yeah, it is also site specific, it is also river specific, it is also stretch specific. So there are several formulas, like we have the variable flow method, building block method, but I will not go into detail.
Right.
For
Will you
thumb
from
rule, 50% नदी का पानी उसका होना चाहिए। मैं हिंदी में बता रहा हूँ, नदी का जैसे हमारा ब्लड है,
and
हमारे शरीर से अगर 50% खून निकाल ले तो क्या होगा? तो a river should maintain at least 50%
think I
of
have to
its own water.
interject here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Venkatesh, Namrata. I have to really interject because we need time for participant question and answer. But I guess you want to still ask the question to Avdhesh, but we still need some time for participants. So please hang around
yes,
there.
will
Avdhesh,
just
sir, over to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Avdhesh, you can, little, Professor Venkatesh has already mentioned about that e-flow technically needs to have so many other aspects. I would like to hear from you the implementation side of it or the governance side of it. If we have to implement this rule that, it has mandated 15 to 20%, how the implementation should happen and who is responsible for the implementation? Please unmute yourself.
In National Water Law Framework Bill, it is very clearly defined. And again, in River Basin Management Bill, it is most clearly defined, but these are not acts till dates. When these will convert to act, then the provisions will very clear the situation, and implementation will definitely be done. And you are talking about interlinking of rivers. Basically, there are so many uh, conflict of ideas. Basically, we are in the concept of interlinking of rivers. That is technically is river basin river basin transfer, river basin water transfer, surplus basin to deficit basin. Rain pattern in our country is variable. Then the different rivers are full of water in different times, and only in time of floods the water will be transferred to other basin which is deficit at that time, and at the same time one is surplus. It is not for 12 months, 365 days. This structure is designed and constructed and executed to transfer surplus water in a specific time to a deficit basin, because one basin is surplus, on the same time the other basin is deficit. Then, and there is no law to share rainwater which is in excess. There is no any legal provision that one state cannot transfer surplus water to other state which is collected by rain, because it is rainwater. There is no provision to obstruct transfer of interbasin water in a specific time, for a specific time. And when we are talking about links, there are two links, Himalayan and peninsular. Himalayan links rivers are not at all linked with peninsular rivers, and peninsular rivers not linked with Himalayan rivers. Then there is no ecological issue to for aquatic animals and other habitat of water. And when we are talking about law of natural flow, basically environmental flow was developed in recent past. Before that, the natural flow was the concept. But in any of the river of the world, natural flow is not maintained right now. And then the system is changed and it converted to environmental flow. And to maintain 50% of water in lean season, some other factors also responsible, like exploitation of groundwater. In lean season, because of sun and moon forces, the groundwater come forward to support surface water. It comes upward. It is a very natural process, and natural forces, by the forces of sun and moon and other uh, natural forces, which water comes forward, the groundwater comes forward to support surface water of river. And river is well flow and plenty of water is available in lean season. But now we exploited our groundwater in the worst condition, that these natural forces are not able to upward flow of groundwater. This is the main reason which is responsible for minimum water or a small channel of a long river in lean season, because groundwater is not able to support now.
Right. So I think one of the ways forward is to maintain the groundwater to ensure the ecological and the basin flow integrity. Suresh Kumar, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question directly?
Yeah, thank you,
You can put
Namrata.
your video on as well. Yeah.
Thank you for giving me a chance to speak and just give some points. Having led the Living Ganga program and the environmental flow methodology, I speak from that angle. And I would like the both eminent speakers to reflect upon that. We do take examples from other parts of the world to say that ecological flow is important. But we should understand that in India, the rivers are cultural entities. So there are cultural requirements for maintaining flows. But the point is also that for every different part of the country, the cultural significance of the river varies. How much water do you need in the river to perform Achman? And these are not static things. Sometimes, do you want to do the Achman sitting on the banks of the river, in the temple, or you want to go to the river? And also other things is that there's a concept of space and time. To what reference condition do you want to revive the river? It's actually not possible to talk about natural flows in this situation. And environmental flow cannot be talked until unless in India we bring in the cultural dimension and social dimension. So certainly the different countries develop methodologies based on their legal frameworks and the socio-cultural aspects. So India has to evolve its own methodology for environmental flow, but it may not be called environmental flow because it's a cultural entity. Ganga river or rivers are cultural symbolism for the civilizations. So I don't think it's good to take examples from abroad and try to say that we should try to fit in that legislation or this legislation, and because we have wardens in those countries, that's why we should have wardens here. It's much more complex situation in India. So having worked with variety of actors, including IITs, institutions, I believe when there was a question on who has the rights, even the court has the right to take suo motu notice and protect the river. As well as Constitution of India says that every citizen is responsible for protection of each natural bodies. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So there are the question comes is when it's a cultural aspect in India, the rights of the river and rights of social, anthropogenic rights also come into conflict. Just want to stop there and wanted to speakers to react to this, that we can't just try to translate an international or other global country experience in India because it's a cultural reverse over here.
Thank you. I think with the response to the question, both the speakers can also give their final remarks as well, because you're very short on time.
Yeah.
After responding the question, you can also say about, what is that one thing that you think is the need of the hour to get rights of rivers in practice or in motion, as you pointed, Professor Venkatesh. Yeah.
Yeah,
Over
I
to
think I agree with Dr. Suresh's propositions. And in fact, this was the summary of a PhD that I guided. The PhD was on e-flows. And this was the kind of conclusion that none of the methodologies could do justice to our river systems. And that's why I say minimum 50% of the flow regime, if you at all have to maintain, so at least 50% of the water. So we have also included like special bathing days during Purnima, during Amavasya, when people go and take a dip. So at least 1 meter depth water should be maintained. And there are references even in our text. I was very surprised to see that there's a reference to even define floodplain. And it says that on the भाद्र मास के कृष्ण पक्ष के चतुर्थी के दिन जहाँ तक गंगा का जल जाए वहां तक गंगा का गर्भ होता है और वहां से 150 हाथ गंगा का तीर होता है. दिस इज रिटन इन बृहद धर्म पुराण, because I have collected the references to the flood plain and the e-flows. So it says that कि जहां तक, and that is the flushing flows, because it says भाद्र मास के कृष्ण पक्षी चतुर्थी, that means the end of monsoon, almost like October and September, when river is having flushing flows. So it is always there, but what we are doing, we are trying to mimic the models, whereas our rivers are very different. Monsoonal rivers, high flushing flows, then river has to swell up 10 times during flooding events. So it requires a lot of riparian lands and the floodplains. So we need a very different approach, right? I agree with him. Totally, I agree with him.
Venkatesh, just wanted to interject, but
Yeah.
rivers are natural phenomena. They will meander and they will create, they
Yeah,
will deposit.
Yeah.
So why are we trying to stop that? So they will bring erosion. They will stop. You can't bring river always to the banks, where you are today.
No, river, see, the two banks of the rivers, one bank is depositing, one bank is eroding. Like the concave bank would be eroding and the convex bank would be depositing. Like if you go to Banaras, Banaras is situated in the concave bank, which is higher, and the convex is the lower where the silt is deposited. So every river in the alluvial plain, because the alluvial is very soft and it meanders, it cut offs, it incised its own valley. So at least we need to protect the river's floodplain, demarcate. And there was this landmark case just came up last month when the NGT said to the state government of UP that please define your floodplain based upon 100 years of high flood level. Earlier they had marked only 25 years. That too, they restricted to 10 years regulatory zones and flooding zones and the no go zones. Now the court is saying that you have to take 100 years flood data, and the idea behind is to protect the land of the river, which I included in my second slide. A river has a right to protect its own land, and there are three terraces, T1, T2 and T3. So it is how you define, like in our, I gave you the कि जहां तक पानी जा रहा है हाई फ्लो में उससे 150 हाथ दोनों साइड, दैट इज द लैंड ऑफ द रिवर, और वहां से चतुर्दिक दिशा में नदी का गर्भ है. So that is the buffer zone. So it was already there in our text, in our scriptures. और भी बहुत सारी चीजें थी, लेकिन through the process, we have lost that traditional knowledge, and we are trying to fit in with these e-flows, right? So I would
I
stop
think I
here.
will I will have to come on board here
Right.
to take charge of the time because these conversations are very interesting. We already had a session previously also, and we were not feeling content with this conversation. That is why we are having this second session, and it seems we need conversations. Any last line from you, Avdhesh sir? And I would really like to take Nirja Shonek's point and maybe take that responsibility on myself, because then I can also control the time. Avdhesh sir, any last line you would like to put here based on whatever discussion we had, or Suresh's question? Thank you, Suresh, for coming and joining here, and or
Always.
you can take Nija's question. Avdhesh sir, over to you.
Just a small point I can mention that there is a Supreme Court direction, because legal discussion is there on the floodplain, and it is said that the river floodplain is what is within the embankments, because there is a anthropogenetic and other factors. So that's the point. Is people were
That's
referring to various
yeah.
cases. The cases the Supreme Court has accepted an affidavit by IIT Delhi, and that is unfortunate.
Yeah, this is really
Yes,
unfortunate
that is
because
unfortunate because
even in
judiciary
UP,
is pro-development.
Yeah.
Judiciary is
even
pro-development and not pro-ecology. Be wrong, but
so,
Avdesh sir,
yeah, like
I really have to stop all of you because I
okay.
have another commitment at 6:45. I have to travel literally for
Basically,
half an hour. Go
in
ahead.
present scenario, there is not an important question that how much area is covered by floodplain. The important is the floodplain must be live. Floodplain not encroached. Live means the ecology of river floodplain must be maintained, and it is a long process to maintain the live floodplain of a river. Sometime in floods, river wash out many things, but the natural and the I am talking about the floodplain, which is live floodplain. Then the floods will wash it, but till next flood, it can maintain itself naturally. And now the main problem is floodplain are encroached and they are not live floodplains right now. At the time of Puran and Vedas, the floodplain was the live floodplains where the wildlife, where the ecology, and where the trees who has the diameter of 2 to 5 meter are are live. Uh, You can see these types of river, and it stopped, it minimized the flood flow, and the water is groundwater is easily recharged by the live floodplain. It is not the question right now that how much floodplain, how demarcation is not very important. That floodplain must be live. And in river basin management bill and in national water law framework law, these provisions are there. If these were implemented and convert to act, then after the process of after long process of 30-40 years, floodplain can be converted to live floodplains.
Okay, I think this is a point where I have to really call it off for the day. I see, Nija, you have a wonderful question, and I can just give one line answer to you and not invite our speakers to answer that because then I cannot control the time. So, Nija, you have a very valid point. If, as you say, it seems a massive task, and what if we seriously, work to resolve this? Could we really do that or appoint guardian bodies? I guess there are guardian bodies. It is just the matter that rivers are transboundary and it makes the guardianship very complex. I can just give you a very interesting example. And Sujit is joining now. Probably he could have also jumped in to answer this question. Thanks, Sujit. You see, I saw a very interesting phenomena in Kerala that a river does not really have a name per se for the whole river. You move on to different places and the river is having a name of the village there or the town there. So that is an indirect community guardianship, you may call, or you may say, oh, there maybe there is an administrative name and this is something else. But I found it quite interesting to really look at river in this way, because everybody was in a way, when I interacted with them, that they said that this is my river, because at the moment we talk about Ganga, it is everybody's, but then it is nobody's as well. And what is more interesting observation for me today, whenever we talk about river rights and responsibilities, Ganga becomes a reference, and unfortunately, all the small rivers go for a toss. Because I think the fact that we are focusing so much on Ganga is also not allowing us to model these laws and probable to bring it to acts, because we are not trying them on other rivers as such. I mean, they are tried, but not literally as a debate, as we always jump into Ganga naturally when we talk about river rights and responsibilities. I will keep it short. Nirja, you can just look at the way rivers are administratively legally dealt in Kerala. And I also invite you, I have already written it in the chat box. Maybe you can also, like Namrata, volunteer to really also take up the responsibility for this session. I invite you to take up the responsibility for one more session, and let us find out more speakers to talk about this interesting subject. This is an endless conversation, but there has to be an end for today, because my senior scholars also give me a cap of time which can be edited and put on the YouTube. So please understand this. And thank you so much, Venkatesh. And it's always good to
Thank you.
hear you talking about river. And thank you, Avdhesh sir. I mean, I know that you have been working on and on for so many years, but I get to know you. So I really wish to that we can do more about these conversations. And definitely thanks a lot, Namrata, that you could manage this, this ocean of wisdom of these two guys and squeeze it into 1 hour or a little bit more conversation. So kudos to you. Before I call it off for the day, I also would like to finish the ritual of W4W to announce the next week and this week's session. This week, Friday Water Arts, we have, and after some time, and it's a wonderful session with another legend in the country, Dr. Swaroop Bhattacharya, and he makes boats of all kinds of culture, and he brings this lot of storytelling, and he's discussing on November 19th at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. IST, Living Fossils, the Boats of Bengal. And next week, Wednesdays for Water, we have another interesting session and professors from few IITs to talk about water efficient technologies and climate smart agriculture on December 4th at 5 p.m. IST. And both the information and other information on W4W is available at w4w.in website. Please do look at it and also follow our social media, and also keep the water conversation going, because we strongly believe that it is extremely important that these conversations are happening on a daily basis. So do join us. And if you think that you would like to be speaker, discussant, or you have somebody who is really keen to share their wisdom and also join the family of W4W, we are always there, because we are a minority but also a water collective, building very strong bit by bit every day, with over 500 speakers spoken on our platform. Really grateful to all the speakers, all the team members who make it possible, and also, of course, all the participants who have touched our lives as well as touched all the speakers here. Thank you so much, all of you. Once again, please take care of yourself. See you soon this Friday or next Monday or Wednesday. Thanks. Bye bye.